GSL Code with our Chosen Wolf.
All right, in the top left, he's good, but his opponent made him look bad. He is.
Stats.
Didn't really use his normal style on Altars
No.
or on Habitation last game.
Probably on purpose.
Yeah, I would say so. Well, his opponent, who's up a game in the series, he is
7.
More commonly known as Rogue in his Pro League games. Was called Savage in Pro League as well last season, but
I think he's fully switched over to Savage. Or I don't know.
well, he still uses the ID Rogue in
Yeah, that's
Pro League,
true.
but
Didn't he use the ID Rogue at IEM?
I think so, yeah.
I believe he did.
It's just, the thing is, like, for him, it's, like, so insignificant, he doesn't really care, right? Because in Korea, all that matters is your name, and the idea is, like, the second afterthought. Unless you're somebody who's, like, really trying to reach out to the foreign scene incredibly, like a player like MC or something.
Here's the thing, too. Like, the foreign scene for StarCraft II is so much bigger than the Korean scene.
I agree, yeah.
And little do these guys know that, for instance, GSL and whatnot are more funded by the foreign scene watching than by the Korean scene. I feel like, you know those KESPA meetings that they have where they talk about to the players about like how to do interviews and stuff, those assemblies that they have?
Right,
like,
they have a lot of those,
twice a year. I feel like we should just put together a presentation for these guys on how changing their name is actually a terrible idea.
Yeah,
and,
I mean,
maybe try to help them because this is actually like...
You build...
The thing is, every time I come up with a memory for what this guy's done, I'm like, that was him, right?
Yeah.
Because he's got multiple IDs.
That's why like a player like Salvation who played in Pro League recently and took an upset game, I look at him and I'm like, I remember you. I think you were on TSL. Then I'm like, oh, wait, no, actually you were on NS Hosa. But like, I at least still remember. I'm like, yeah, he's been around for a long time. I can be like, yeah, I remember that name. I can look him up. But if you
this
change your ID,
happens sometimes
it's like,
where people change an ID and then come back suddenly, and I don't know it's the same guy for a little
yeah,
bit, and then
somebody's
someone
like,
tells me,
did you
like,
know?
oh, God!
Yeah, did you know that's actually so-and-so from 2009?
Yeah.
And you're like, oh. Well, why not keep up with who you are, you know? They need to understand, just this, I guess, foremost, above all, that the foreign scene, nobody knows their names. And you and I have been commentating in Korea for StarCraft II since the beginning of StarCraft II, you especially, before I even came out here. But no matter how many times I commentate these players, I can't remember all of their Korean names.
Yeah.
I know a lot of them.
It took me so many years. Eventually, I knew, like, almost every StarCraft 1 pro's Korean name.
Yeah.
And then I started commentating heavily, and I had to use their IDs. And
then
it
you just kind of fades away
because I have to connect them with the IDs because that's like you don't want to hear me say the Korean names every time I'm talking about a player.
Yeah,
you know,
it's for us like more practical to call them by their IDs because of how it is. And actually, GOMTV in the GSL forced every player to have their ID in English. We had players like Squirtle actually have the Korean word for Squirtle as his ID, and then
Boogie.
yeah, there was like a lot of confusion back then. Like Marine King called himself Hey Byung-wang, which is the King of Marines, and like, you know, eventually, finally, you know, even though you guys had translated names for them, everything is standardized now because GOM realized, you know, hey, this is actually what foreigners know these players by.
Yeah.
It's harder
it's
to say.
It's their brand. It's their ID, the name that you can connect
Right,
with.
earlier I tried to say Savage's name, and I totally butchered it because, like, it's a really hard word to say. And
oh, yeah, his name is actually ridiculously hard.
Byung-dong, I think it is. Like, it's... Yeah, Byung-dong.
Yeah.
That's hard to say.
Yeah.
Good luck with that one. Day Up, on the other hand, stats his ID is a little bit easier.
Yeah, Day Up is easy.
It's a pretty rare name, actually. I've never heard that before, except by stats, of course. But actually, both of their names are pretty unique, looking at it. But yeah, so we're finally back. I don't know what the issue was with the pause, but it looks like everything is okay.
Yeah, everything seems to be fine. It's, excuse me, I'm sorry. Got a little bit of a cough going on. Savage had a little screen problem, but that seems to be all set now.
Yeah. Anyways, like let's go into this game. We finally can. Double hatch before pool, and
yeah, and he's fighting against someone that's gone for Nexus first, which is good. But then he did go into a Forge. So what I'm hoping to see out of this, because it looks to me like he didn't really do scouting here. And what that means is that there was no chance for a cannon rush. This is just like a safety forge,
this is
which
like,
slows down all his tech.
This is all Sulky's fault because Sulky will always do an early pool on this map when you least expect it. And I feel like because that's viable and because Sulky himself has shown in televised matches time and time again that if you play too greedy, you can get punished.
Yeah.
Everybody's making a forge now, and you just kind of, if you don't do it and you die, you just feel horrible. And if you
it's the
do
worst
do
feeling
it,
in the world.
if you do it and you go and scout that your opponent went double hatch before full, you feel even more horrible. Actually, you're like, oh god, like I had to make the forge. You know, it's just how this map works.
Do you know how you can make this okay though? How you make it okay is you incorporate that early forge into your build somehow, and that makes, in my opinion, it makes it feel a lot less bad, like a lot less like you got this short end of the stick. Like if he has a very nice build where he wants to get a quick +2 or maybe a quick +1 for some pressure with Zealots, either one of those is going to make the fact that he went for the quicker forge not quite as bad.
Yeah.
Although, you know, obviously getting that afterwards and maybe putting a couple extra chrono boosts would feel even better, but
yeah.
We'll see what he does with it.
We'll see. And it's been scouted, of course, that early drone that was like teasing the probe earlier that almost tied, saw that it was there. And now he's going to come up with these lings, make sure nothing's moving out, no probes coming to make forward pylons. He's got the Overlord in position to go into the main base. The Overlord will be able to see if he turns it, if the +1 is being researched or not. But even without the Overlord, he can send the ling up. So he's got the ability to check everything. So that's going pretty well for him. Now, Stargate will finish here in just a second, and it looks to be Phoenix's most likely coming out here for stats. I don't really like the choice to go into Oracles at these spawning locations. Well, just on this map in general.
Yeah.
I
well,
mean,
if you go Oracle,
it,
you're like forced into Void Ray most likely, and you know, if you're going Void Ray on this map, you're a little bit immobile. You're kind of setting up for a death ball that your opponent is probably going to not die to because he's so far away, and then switch into a tech that you don't want to see. So Phoenix is, I mean, just because of how often you're probably going to have to end up in Sky Toss, I feel like this is just a good opening.
Yeah, I mean, especially with how Stats likes to play. Like, there are like only 2 Zergs I really like when they go Void Rays on, and I like trust them, and that's Liquid Hero and Zest. Like, I'm like, I trust you. I feel like you can do this.
Okay.
But like the other pros, when they tried, I'm like, well, we'll see.
All right.
You know what I mean? Like when I see
I know what
Super
you mean.
try it, I'm like, no, I don't think you can do this. Actually, like you're
When I
not
see
well versed.
Super is one of my least favorite players.
I know this is true for you, and I'm sorry about it because I really think he's actually come into his own recently.
He has.
Good.
He's been doing better recently. That doesn't mean that I have to like his style.
You don't have to like him. I like him.
Don't tell me what to do, Wolf. I'll like who I want to like. But yeah, I see what you're saying with it. Definitely different people have different strengths. And you can see a lot of differences in the way that they handle their units. Now, Stats is someone that's gone Sky Toss a lot, and as you can see, like this is excellent Phoenix control. Notice how he's not gotten hit by the Spore even once. Queen hits don't matter nearly as much as Spore hits.
Yeah, you're right.
Thanks.
Sorry, I was like thinking about just a bunch of other players who go Void Rays a lot, and like I'm like, well, as I said about Liquid Hero accurate earlier, I'm like, yeah, I think so. I feel like he's pretty good at it, but you know, Hero, funnily enough, was actually the first player to consistently do Phoenix openings in Korea against Zerg, like every time I was casting before he even got into Code A, I was like,
back in the day, he was definitely an innovator. There's no question about that.
Yeah, he was.
And not that he isn't anymore. It's not like it was. Like you can't just be like, well, Liquid Hero's top 5 Protoss in the world. You just can't say that anymore.
No.
You could have that opinion and not be called completely crazy.
Actually,
but
the thing is, even back then, he wasn't even, like, I would say top 10 Protoss in the world, but he was still the first one that did the Phoenix opening the best.
I don't know. I think back then you could have called him top 10 and gotten away with it pretty easily, in my opinion. I thought he was quite good, even though he wasn't qualifying yet.
Like, I don't know if you remember this tournament that was called, well, hold that thought. Let's see if these links get. No, they won't. Actually, they're going to get trapped.
Oh,
what?
No!
That's just, like, totally wonky and weird. Like, he missed the force field and the links got in. Like, oh.
Yeah, that's pretty painful. Well, lucky for him, he didn't lose a sentry, and, you know, he's probably going to end up losing, like, a...
Oh, wow.
Boy.
Well, I think Stats
Okay, this was actually... Like, wow, those force fields were kind of magical in the Moonwalking Sentry.
Oh,
and he lost it.
Oh! Everything has
bad.
gone horribly wrong for Stats here. And I feel like initially I could just be like, oh, that's too bad. You know, that wasn't really his fault. The position on those units was just like a little bit off. You know, from all, you know, outside perspectives, it looked like they were placed well. So I'm sure he thought so too. But,
yeah.
But now he's like, he's lost those units. The Lings came in the second time, which he could have completely controlled. Now he lost a Phoenix as well to just a bit of a miscontrol. It's like he's fallen apart here.
Well, you know, and the thing is, I wall similar to this as well. But whenever you have like a wall that goes against terrain instead of another building for your hole,
Oh,
Stuck
God!
Can't get in. Oh, well, that's a lack of hold position right there.
Oh, they're all inside the main base here.
Look at this savagery that we're watching.
Oh, God. Yeah, definitely. This is more savage than it is rogue, that's for sure.
Yeah, well,
that Zealot was a bit rogue, man, not listening, not being on hold position. Not going to get this Colossus. That's a bit overzealous. But
he's not even controlling that anymore. All he cares about is getting up the tech that he wants. He's making a bunch of Infestors, a bunch of Lings, continuing melee upgrades, and going to Hive. It looks like pretty obvious Ultras here, which is a great choice. When you look at the creep spread, if he gets out a few Ultras, they'll stomp force fields, they'll do extra damage to Stalkers and Colossus, and that's the type of timing attack that we're watching. So I feel like that is an excellent choice for him to go into Ultralisk attack.
It's pretty situational, but yeah.
That's an Infestation Pit, not Ultralisk Cavern.
Yeah, I think that's a misclick, actually. The I and the U are right next to each other on the keyboard. Look down at your keyboard right now.
That actually could possibly cost him the game. I don't think it's going to, but that's a huge mistake.
Yeah, that's clearly supposed to be an Ultralisk Cavern.
Yeah.
This is just like the kind of misclick that happens when you're like playing at 300 APM, as you can see Savages right here.
Yeah.
Now he's got to be careful about like doing these Ling Run buys. Tazus actually talks about this a lot. Sometimes it seems like when you get a run by of a huge amount of Lings into the base, it's like, oh no, but actually Lings don't do that much damage, and then you lose a lot of Lings, spend a lot of larvae, you lose your map control. And I feel like this is something he has to be careful about, especially now that he's gotten so much success out of Lings, to not just be like, well, I guess he's going to keep messing up the Zealots.
Yeah. You got lucky a few times already. They did reasonable damage, I guess. It wasn't like a throwaway. Don't waste any more units.
Yeah, just keep those alive, keep that presence on the map, keep that backstab potential there. Oh, this is nice. I mean, just to be able to do at 14 minutes a little bit of Phoenix harassment and kill some workers. And actually maybe kill a Viper? What?
That would be really nice. I would consider suiciding on that Viper, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, the Phoenixes aren't going to be useful for all too much else.
You know what's really funny is he started Immortal production because he realizes that this should be an Ultralisk build, but the Ultras are nowhere to be seen.
I think he's starting to get confused, too. Like, he's also starting the Psystorm because he's like, well, wait, maybe you're just doing a big Muta switch?
Well, I mean, the big Muta switch I'm sure will come in at some point. We do see +1 air attacks started. If the game goes super long and you don't end up seeing Mutas on this map, that's a weird game.
That's true.
So definitely could happen later on, but no Ultras made quite yet. And the thing is, if he gets to scout exactly what this composition is, he may even choose to skip making the Ultras, which he accidentally doesn't have yet.
Yeah.
This could actually turn out fortuitous.
Yeah, you know that feeling when you're like, you go to your main hatchery and you go to make Ultras because you're like, it must be done by now, and you just can't make them. You're like, wow. And you look at that moment and see that you actually accidentally made in the second infestation pit.
I look at that moment, realize I haven't made my layer yet.
This is pretty cool because
this is a master of Protoss right here. This is fantastic. Oh god,
it's like quite good against Lings too because he wants them actually to get past. That's why there's a hole. He wants the Lings to actually filter through. Like the baleen of a whale.
This is something that we've seen before. Yeah, this is so good against Ultras. All you need to do against Ultras is stay near buildings because they're so fat, they're so big that you need buildings to help block them. And as soon as there's buildings there, the Ultras do nothing. So what Stats is doing here is basically saying, if you attack me, I win the battle hugely.
Yeah.
A huge victory for him. Like, no chance that you will lose the battle.
Even with Fungals. You lock that army down, it's still behind buildings. So
no, you can't go through that pylon wall. Like, from here, the Savage should already be maybe throwing down a second Spire. From here, if I were him, I'd be thinking about Broodlords. Get that greater Spire.
There's a second Spire. That was pretty cool.
Oh, that was nice.
This is brilliant play out of Stats. This is like the kind of play where I look at this and I go, wow, if things were a little bit different in game one. I'll hold that thought because this time he fights actually in front of his wall and gets fungled, and this is the best engagement Savage could hope for.
Yeah, absolutely it is, but still he's going to end up losing it just because his composition is superior to what he has.
I'm worried for him because he doesn't have enough gas to actually switch to Mutas, and he makes 5 more Ultras. That's a panic button he's pressing. And I think that's actually the GG button he's basically pushing right now because can he make those 5 Ultras worth it?
This composition is made to kill these units that he's making right now. That was, basically Stats has been on top of what units Savage has been trying to go for. And
I think this is
it's so hard.
this is a moment where you look at this, even, you know, if you're like a lower level StarCraft 2 player, you're like, he got the fungals, he's got the blinding clouds, there's no way he can lose a fight with that composition. But if you look at it a little bit more closely, the composition that's built here for the Protoss is so much stronger. And even underneath blinding cloud here with Psystorms, he like just does not care. He just doesn't.
He has so much splash damage, which just kills the Lings instantly, and then everything else he has kills Ultras because they can't fight alone. And even with this many Ultras, look at those 2 Immortals. See how much damage they're outputting? It's ridiculous.
It is ridiculous, man. That's game. We are going to a game 3 here between these two. Absolutely. This hatchery is dead, and he's now forcing his way into the main base. The Lings and Ultras are now fighting into a choke point on that ramp. Never ideal, and a good lesson here in how to engage against Protoss, or rather how not to engage against a Protoss. Sats takes a sip of his coffee, and he's ready for his map, or his opponent finally having to pick a map twice.
All right, so you know what, that game, it makes me a little bit sad because Savage did mess up with the missed Ultras Cavern. That ended up being okay, but when he attacked in, it was like a weird area, but you know what I think it is he saw, he's like, oh, he's not behind the pylons, maybe I'll take this fight.
Yeah, and he got good blinding clouds, and yeah, he has all those spells, but he didn't look closely enough at what was in that army.
Yeah, like, to actually beat that army, he'd have to work on his composition a little bit and get a nice surround on creep. I feel like what he should have done is figured out what the army was, sat back, because I think, like, my real opinion, I've said this a long time about Ultra-based armies in Zerg vs. Protoss, it's an army-killing army.
Yeah.
You kill an army when they attack you. It's not for attacking. When you attack with an Ultras-based army, that's when you lose.
Yeah, because your opponent is ready for you. If you're ever attacking with Ultras, your opponent has seen your Ultras and he's prepared for you, and or he has a building wall.
Yeah, it's just, you're not going to get the right surface areas or anything. You need the speed upgrade of the creep. You need to be defensive with them and crush what comes at you. What they do when you have an Ultras-based army, it buys you basically forever because Protoss doesn't want to come on creep against you because he knows he'll lose his army. In that case, you can go into the units you actually need, which I feel like he needed Broodlords, to be honest.
Yeah, the key here also, too, I would say, and we haven't really talked about this, are those High Templar and the Warp Prism that feedback all the Vipers.
Fantastic.
The Infestors as well got feedbacked, and that means the Protoss army can move, because if you're blinding clouded, that's annoying, that's terrible. But if you just walk out of it, then so what? And Storms don't care about blinding clouds either, which we saw in that engagement with the Zerglings. So it's now Savage's map pick. He got the early lead, and he has that final map choice against Stats. He chooses Overgrowth. One of these two players is going